Hi everyone. So now, after having some thoughts about the human excretory system, we are going in details for the human urinary system. So the human urinary system, you can see this diagram made by me, thanks, includes the kidneys. There are two kidneys. One of the kidneys is slightly lower to arrange other organs, but we don't have to worry about that. The kidneys have this layer called peritoneum, which is the connective tissue covering. There is this aorta coming, and then there's this vena cava, which is bringing all the blood towards the heart. So there's an artery and a vein. If you look closely, I drew this diagram to show that the aorta or the arteries have a thicker wall and they have a very regular lumen, while the veins have a thinner wall and their inside lumen is a little irregular in shape, irregular lumen. So that clears us that the red one is the artery and the blue one is the vein. So let me write vein and aorta, obviously, which is the artery. So moving on, when we talk about the kidney, there is a renal artery which brings the blood from the aorta towards the kidney and towards each tissue or each region of the kidney. You can see this blue one, which is the renal vein. So renal vein brings the blood back from the kidney towards the heart. There is a urinary duct, or generally people call it the ureters. Then we have the urinary bladder, which carries the urine, I should say. And then we have the urethra, which is the final tube through which the urine is eliminated. The urinary duct is also known as the ureters. When we cut the kidney open, the outer darker region is known as the cortex, and then the inner lighter region is known as the medulla. There are triangular regions across the kidney known as the pyramids. Now what's inside of them is a totally different story. If we enlarge through this diagram of a kidney, we see that there are so many microscopic structures. These microscopic filtration units are present inside the cortex, like the medulla. They're spread through it, and these are known as the nephrons. These are the ultimate filtration units, and they are connected with tubings known as the collecting duct. There are so many nephrons, almost 1 million in one kidney. So when the blood goes into the pyramids, the blood carries the urea. Remember, we talked about the fact that kidney gets the urea through the blood. So each nephron is in charge of filtration. Let's talk about the nephron structure in detail. I have magnified this nephron. I drew this diagram for you guys. So each nephron gets a thicker blood vessel known as the afferent arteriole. This afferent arteriole makes minute capillaries known as the glomerulus. Glomerulus. This is the tuft of the capillaries. And then blood goes away through another vessel known as the efferent arteriole. So afferent brings blood towards the nephron and efferent takes it away. Glomerulus is surrounded by a membrane system known as the Bowman's capsule. This Bowman's capsule is where filtration happens. Then there's a tube known as the proximal convoluted tubule. Convoluted means highly coiled. So proximal convoluted tubule is there, and then there is a U-shaped tube. This U-shaped tube is known as the loop of Henle. And then from the loop of the Henle, what you see is another tube known as the distal convoluted tubule. Proximal means closer to the Bowman's capsule, distal means away. And then finally you have the collecting duct, which carries the final urine. There is blood capillaries all around the nephron tubes, and these capillaries are known as the peritubular capillaries. It's very important to have these blood capillaries around the nephron, as we'll talk about it. When the blood comes from the afferent arteriole into the glomerulus, small substances pass through the blood and go into the Bowman's capsule. That is called as, let me write it clearly. That is called as ultrafiltration. So except for big proteins and except for big red blood cells, everything passes into the Bowman's capsule. And that is ultrafiltration. So small soluble substances. For example, ions, for example, urea itself, glucose because it's very small and soluble, like amino acids also, excess water also, they pass through this Bowman's capsule membranes and they go from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. That is called ultrafiltration. And then everything that goes inside is known as the filtrate. Now the filtrate is moving across the proximal convoluted tubule and the loop of Henle. This is where renal reabsorption happens. As the filtrate passes through the proximal convoluted tubule and the distal convoluted tubules, what happens is the blood, which is capillaries, the blood capillaries nearby, the blood capillaries reabsorb essential substances. And it makes sure that essential substances don't go into the urine. Like ions, like glucose, and like important amino acids, they are reabsorbed into the blood because they were not meant to go into the urine. What is left behind? Left behind is the toxic substances like urea itself. And then it keeps on moving through the collecting duct. This is almost the final urine. But finally in the collecting duct something else happens. Finally, water is also reabsorbed as much as possible. So water is also reabsorbed in collecting duct. By reabsorption we means it goes into the blood. So the urine becomes very concentrated. So leaving a concentrated urine behind, which includes urea, excess water and salts. But most of the water is reabsorbed in mammals. And finally, the collecting duct produces the urine, which goes outside the collecting duct, and finally it is eliminated out of the kidney.